distinguished faith leaders, dignitaries, and founding members of the Family Peace Association from around the world. Welcome to Seoul, Korea, my birthplace, and thank you for joining me in this historic inauguration of the Family Peace Association. The inaugural theme is creating a new spiritual consciousness rooted in God-centered families. This theme encapsulates the aspirations of this new organization and offers a simple but profound solution to the vexing problems of our age. For more than 2 decades, I have championed the vision of one family under God throughout the world. Initially, the primary vehicles for this were the organization within the larger unification movement. Although these entities made some progress, they had inherent legacy, institutional, and operational limitations. In 2009, I created the Global Peace Foundation as a separate vehicle to carry forward this mission. And as many of you have witnessed, we have made tremendous strides in promoting this vision around the world. Yet, for real transformation, a new organization is needed to supplement the efforts of GPF and its stated mission. This entity, from the very beginning, has to have a spiritual orientation that could inspire a global grassroots movement for peace on every level. It has to be relevant, simple, meaningful to the individual, family, society, nation, and world. In addition, it has to be a membership organization that unites the human family across all the physical and perceived divides of our time. The Family Peace Association is that new vehicle. Ladies and gentlemen, the family is the most fundamental and defining institution of our human experience. It is a sacred institution where God's original vision of creation was meant to take root. It should have been the wellspring of true love, a divine, selfless love of self-sacrifice. The school of love where true life is formed, and the hometown of God's direct dominion, where all humanity is connected directly to Him through a blood lineage and a covenant in blood. Instead of being just our creator, God intended to be our eternal true parents and co-create with His sons and daughters the physical kingdom of heaven and earth. His deepest desire was to connect intimately to every human life in a parent and child relationship of love. Through this relationship, He wanted to bequeath His truth, His righteousness, and His goodness to His sons and daughters, expanding His presence through blood ties into a wider network of familial relationships, especially to subsequent generations. Such God-centered families would and should have been the building blocks for a peaceful, ideal world. I'm sure all of you would agree that the closest foundational relationships we experience in our lives is within our families. That is why, regardless of culture, ethnicity, race, or nationality, the intimacy of familial relationships is a universal ideal. We therefore utilize familial terms when we want to highlight the closeness of non-family relationships. Our closest friends are like our brothers and sisters. Respected elders and mentors are like our fathers and mothers. Younger people we care deeply for are like our sons and daughters. This intimacy makes the family the natural school of love, interdependence, and social cohesion. The amazing fact about the human experience is that every person begins life not by choice, but by circumstance. We are thrust into this world as products of our parents' union, completely helpless and dependent on our parents' care and love to survive and to grow. As we experience the relationships with our siblings, our grandparents, our uncles, our aunts, and cousins, it teaches us from the outset that we are by nature relational beings and therefore interdependent. As a direct result, we realize that our identity, sense of purpose, and happiness is defined in meaningful love relationships with others that naturally makes us find our own unique place within our families. At this time, when values and norms are being vastly contested and redefined, there is an urgent need to clarify and uplift time-honored universal principles and values. Such principles can be the much-needed compass to navigate through this confusion and guide humanity toward God's ideal, which I believe is rooted first and foremost in families centered upon the divine love of God. We do not have to look far for evidence of these universal principles. We can first look to the great faith traditions themselves that have preserved, taught, and practiced time-honored traditions that point to the innate value of human life and the proper order in human relationships, especially in families, as well as the virtues by which we live. Although they may differ in religious dogma, this is but a small part of their teaching. The vast majority of their instruction deals with universal truths. These truths are the basis of universal spiritual principles and values that all people of faith share. Second, we can look to the natural world and find the hand of God in the design and order that exists in all creation. I spend a lot of time in the wilderness because it is my first place of worship where I seek God, His guidance, and strengthen my inner spirit. In the unforgiving mountains of Alaska or under the beating sun of Africa's savannas, you cannot hide behind artificial, false pretensions and are forced to see yourself for who you truly are. That is why the natural world is where many of the great faith leaders turn to as they sought to understand God, our Creator, and His purpose for creation. The third area that can provide evidence of universal principles is in the field of social sciences. Just as natural sciences have advanced at an unimaginable pace to help us understand the created world, social science has also developed various ways to better objectively understand human beings, our interactions, and what contributes to happiness, fulfillment, and health. When not skewed and used for self-centered, agenda-seeking purposes, we can find plenty of data points that point to the importance of traditional, God-centered families. Perhaps these truths about the family appear self-evident to all of us gathered here. Yet today, they face serious challenges from many quarters in the developed world. Traditional ideals and bedrock values that define the human family throughout history, providing the foundation for cohesive societies, are being called into question. This inner strife and confusion, especially in the West, has global consequences since it reflects a deteriorating moral authority in the eyes of the rest of the world. The West represents only a small fraction of the 7.5 billion people that inhabit the earth, although its influence in the past century is undeniable. Yet for most of that time, it led the global community by espousing universal ideals of fundamental human rights and freedoms that elevated the human condition. These were spiritual principles and values that came from the West's Judeo-Christian heritage. But with the rise of the secular progressive movements of the 1960s, many of those time-honored traditions have eroded in Western culture to the point where the very mentioning of God and faith in the public square is frowned upon. Yet, the developing world is largely made up of traditional and religious societies and cultures that reject many of the social experiments of the counter-cultural movement. The excesses of the West's materialistic and secular culture is offensive to most in these parts of the world. Although they seek the prosperity of the developed world, they do not want to adopt their modern values. As many experts on the subject of global war on terror acknowledge, Islamist terrorist groups are capitalizing on the growing consensus that the West has lost its way as a moral leader of this age. The nature of this global conflict, with its religious overtones, suggests a deeper issue of moral authority and spiritual leadership. Although the radicalization of Islam has to be dealt with within that faith community, the ideology of Islamic or religious terrorism will be defeated by an alternative spiritual ideology that can go beyond the confines of religious dogma and enlighten humanity on fundamental universal truths. The secular materialistic cultures of the developed world often place the greatest emphasis on immediate gratification instead of self-sacrifice, self-control, and enduring human relationships. These are the disturbing trends towards an egoistic hyper-individualism fueled by the advent of social media, coupled with the dehumanizing effect of the virtual world through the internet. Many are concerned with the societal effects from these technological advancements, since they seem to diminish human interaction and deep introspection, leaving many to wonder what the long-term impact of these trends will be. Most importantly, there seems to be a growing consensus that technology could solve all the global problems, fueling technologically driven utopian ideas that erode the fundamental meaning and essence of life, rooted in humanity's spiritual consciousness. Yet, this consciousness was a foundation of all the great awakenings throughout human history, where we reached new levels of enlightened understanding. From the Pax Mongolica of Eurasia to the Reformation and Enlightenment in Europe, the universal ideals of freedom of religion, commerce, thought, and the importance of personal merit and talent were conceived, matured, and grew. They led to the formation of the United States, which championed fundamental human rights and freedoms, leading to the ideals that defined the West. Always, it was the quest for spiritual truths that fostered these monumental developments. The absence of a new spiritual consciousness in the developed world, amid major social rifts along racial, ethnic, religious, economic, ideological, and hyper-partisan lines, is fragmenting the social fabric of the first world nations. Many are beginning to realize that wealth, technology, abundant goods and services address physical needs, but they can never satisfy the spirit's desire to seek truth and meaning. That can only come through awakening of one's soul. The family is the most basic of all social units that addresses our most essential physical, emotional, and spiritual needs. Thus, it is universally relevant and meaningful to our human experience. It engenders, molds, and defines who we are, what we become, and most importantly, our deepest relationships. Therefore, it is the natural starting point for any meaningful transformation on the individual, family, societal, national, and worldwide levels. Since God is a source of all truth, righteousness, and goodness, His presence and blessings are essential ingredients in establishing families that reflect those ideals. Just as the ideals of fundamental human rights and freedoms are acknowledged to come from our Creator and not from any human institution. The perfection of the human condition can only come about when it is aligned to His purpose. True freedom and innate human value can only be realized when we recognize and live according to the dictates of the Spirit and our conscience. It is in the family where these ideals first need to be cultivated and experienced, and then shared with the rest of society, nations, and the world. It is through such families that humanity has a chance to be enlightened and become active participants in building a world of peace and prosperity. It is where universal principles and values are made real, where God's truth, righteousness, and goodness emerge. This original, unchanging purpose of the family gives substance to the theme of this inaugural, of creating a new spiritual consciousness in God-centered families. Ladies and gentlemen, today is a very meaningful day for me. On the one hand, this day represents a milestone for humanity where all of you, men and women, families, faith traditions, and organizations from around the world are standing together to declare your commitment to cultivating God-centered families. However, on the other hand, for me personally, this inauguration also expresses my commitment to continuing my father's lifelong work. My father had founded the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification with the intention of creating a global movement to inspire all humanity to establish God-centered families. During public addresses, he often opined, "What do you think God's ultimate purpose for creating human beings is? Simply put, it is to experience joy through relating with ideal families filled with true love, living as one family with God." I personally witnessed the difficulty my father faced as he sought to articulate this mission and bring it to life. His entire life was devoted to responding to God's call, to find a way for all humanity to live together in peace and happiness. His work was not merely for one people, one faith. It was for all humanity. He was often misunderstood by the wider public and sometimes exploited by his own supporters with their own self-serving agendas. Yet to the end, he remained steadfast in his commitment to God and to humanity. As his son and as one who shares in his aspirations, I'm committed to bringing our shared dream to fruition. In 1998, when I was appointed the International Vice President of the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, I made a promise before heaven and all humanity. That I would carry forward my parents' dream to advance God's kingdom through the formation of God-centered families. Although I can no longer work through the Family Federation for World Peace because it is not true to my father's original mission today, with the creation of the Family Peace Association, I am fulfilling that promise. This spiritual movement will carry forward the original vision that animated my father's life, which is a dream of a peaceful, ideal world where all humanity stands as one family under God. Today, we stand at an inflection point in history. The world is ripe for the next great awakening of our collective human consciousness. Yet at the same time, the family, which should be a divine institution, is being undermined before our very eyes by the many disruptive forces at work within modern culture, dissolving the bonds of friendship and love in our societies. In its wake, purely human institutions, let they be secular or religious, are taking its place, exacerbating the already existing divides within humanity. The role of God-centered families is central to all positive human development, since it brings back the divinity in that sacred institution and aligns it to the original purpose of creation. Without such families, humanity will not have the moral clarity and conviction to take on the challenges of this age and build a brighter future for our children and our grandchildren. The course of human society will turn on how well we understand this truth and the choices we make today. At a time when humanity is growing more fragmented as a result of religious, racial, cultural, and economic tensions, we need to find common cause and work towards a world where every person is valued as a son and daughter of God. As people of faith and good conscience, we need to rise above differences of doctrine and ideology and recognize the universal principles and shared values embodied in the time-honored teachings of the world's great faith traditions. Most importantly, we need to cooperate in enlightening humanity's spiritual consciousness to turn to our common Creator and build one family under God, one family at a time. Please join with me in officially launching the Family Peace Association. Let us work to usher in an era of peace by creating families where God will be pleased to dwell and through which His light and peace can spread throughout the world. May God bless you, your families. Thank you very much.
대단히 감사합니다.